Are we not men? We are Homo Vulgaris.
I can never think of anything good to say at the start of the episode.
This is Homo Vulgaris. We're not here to say good things.
No, we're here to talk about death and despair and our imminent cyber dystopia.
And this is the hip new retro episode where we go back to the beginnings of Homo Vulgaris, and we bring back a face that you may not have seen in several decades. That's me. I'm the fair and wise Artiph, back once again to grace your ears.
Artiph is back. Wow. After so many episodes, after 100 spectacular episodes, he's back.
350,000 outstanding episodes. We've been doing this for 400 years, and it feels great.
$120,000 a month on Patreon. You know, we want to say fuck all of you. You know, you're stupid for sending us all that money.
Yeah, we took your money. We bought a spaceship, we went into space and accelerated past the speed of light, and now we exist beyond time-space where you can never get your money back, but we will always be withdrawing out of your bank account forever.
I used your money to pay Elon Musk to let me give him a hand job with a sock.
And all we can do with our newfound omnipotence is record 394,000 episodes of a podcast.
Hey, man.
And send them back in time and have our past selves put them in order to complete the future ruse.
That's basically all God ever did, was just post, and then his posts were translated into a book.
And everybody's clicking the angry reaction these days.
Like the burning bush that Moses saw was just a GIF. He was just, he was like a caveman. He didn't know what he was looking at.
People only saw in 260p back then.
Was the Old Testament the secret subforum he only posted in when he was drunk then?
I mean, the Old Testament is like the first forum. That was like Usenet.
Oh, I see. Back before we had to start watching what we said on the internet because our identities slowly became more and more intertwined with our real personas.
It is hard to escape yourself on the internet these days. It's
Back
hard
when God still posted under the alias XX Sephiroth 420 Naruto XX.
The world is just God's dead journal. We should start an official Homo Vulgaris dead journal. That's where we should be our official website. If George R.R. Martin can have a live journal, then I don't see why we can't.
Does he still use LiveJournal?
He does. That's even weirder than the fact he still writes on WordPerfect on MS-DOS.
I'm more surprised by the fact that George R.R. Martin corresponds with anyone. Like the vision I had of him was like this hermit holed up in the frigid north wastelands, typing on an old computer terminal in the small hours of the morning.
I always imagined him like with a quill and ink and like just scrolls of papyrus, because it's the only reason it should take him that long to write a fucking book.
We're both wrong. He's a fat shit who lives in the desert and just eats all day and shit posts, probably under a fake name like Rape and Big.
That is what happened. He actually wrote the entire book. He's written it about 6 times now, but every time he always tries to ferry it to his publisher by carrier pigeon, and every time the pigeon dies on the way.
Anyhow, that's enough of J.R.R. Martin. We can talk about him some more maybe when he gets another book out, or if his TV boys because I'm pretty sure at this point he's just like, I'm not gonna finish these. I'm just gonna let
the TV writers catch up and write the rest for me.
All right, guys, here's what's supposed to happen. Just write this, okay?
I got one for you. Georgeson R.R. Martin.
Oh, God. I mean, argument could be made that Westeros just represents USA prison.
Just like There's all these climactic fights in like giant, large scale battles, political intrigue, rape, deception, all this. And the final encounter is just resolved by somebody being shot exactly 8 times in the forehead
with a crossbow.
With a crossbow,
no, just with a 9mm. It never explain it.
Yeah, Tyrion jumps through a window and
he
shoots.
Just pulls out a small man-sized handgun.
Oh, I guess maybe I could, since we aren't going to do the Georgeson episode yet, I could read a couple Georgeson messages I've gotten recently.
Oh boy!
All right, let's set the mood. Deep in the heart of the forest, winter is coming, and a pigeon arrives at Shaga's doorstep bearing a message.
Sometimes men have sex with other men to prove that their penis still works, thus proving that they are straight if their penis functions.
So you can't be heterosexual if you have erectile dysfunction.
Exactly. Oh,
I was speaking to a few black people the other day. I said, not to cause alarm to anyone, however, Mr. Magenta did recently slam his penis into the anus of a man named Trent. Darius looks at me real solemnly and says, indeed, this does happen from time to time.
What's the context for that one? Who are these people?
You gotta watch out for that. I love the tone of the last line. He's just like, yeah, it's been happening a lot lately. We can't stop it. Oh my god.
Sometimes men edit posts. Other times men edit anus. Augmentation for the anus of Trent. Pleasure bound.
Fucking hell.
Georgeson sure is a guy who thinks a lot about gay sex for a guy who really doesn't want to be considered gay.
He brought up a friend of the show, Kiwi Farms. Did you ever post in Kiwi Farms forum? Had me there recently. Registered to that forum, a user on a former board. He says, yeah, I didn't even respond. I understand the African nature of the question makes it hard to answer. Mr. Magenta is now on high alert.
The African nature of the question?
I don't. The forum kind of pisses me off, though, because it don't show people's post count under their name. You have to click on their name to see their post count. Also, other forums show register date under the name. This forum don't show that either, only if you click the name, which can be time-consuming. How far would you go to save a man's sexuality? Black men in Africa do not have the luxury of food. While men are stuffing their goddamn faces, the people in Africa have no food. America is so selfish. We are making ourselves obese just so men in Africa can starve to death. Think about that next time you consider eating something.
I love the causation he's implying here, that we eat in America specifically so people in Africa can go hungry.
I mean, he's not that far off the mark. I saw an article the other day that said after when you kind of account for all of the economic activity, most of the wealth in Africa is still extracted back to Europe and North America.
Yes, but we don't eat food specifically to deprive Africans of food.
Maybe you don't.
Speaking of headlines, I actually the first excerpt there you read reminded me of an article I saw that I wanted to bring up when you were done with this.
Yes.
Let me find it here. It's actually in Spanish. The headline translates to "Bud sex between men who are not homosexual." Apparently, there's a growing trend in some parts of the world for men who are definitely not homosexual to have sex with one another as buds.
I'd be more down for that if they didn't call it bud sex.
Yeah, that kind of makes me uncomfortable, to be honest. I
love the fact that it's written in plain English too. Just the bud sex part. The rest of it is in Spanish, but the bud sex part is in English.
Arriba taco supreme, bud sex. Is that racist? Because I don't actually speak Spanish.
Sounds racist.
Everything is racist these days. You know how in the 90s we used to talk about how everything gave you cancer? It's a lot like that of the 2010. You're always being racist somehow, even if you don't know it.
Honestly, I mean that's not untrue.
It isn't, but we're much more We're much more keen on prosecuting one another and judging one another because of it nowadays.
It's easy to pick on the worst examples of more woke than thou people online, but it's not inherently a bad thing. Like, you should be.
Yeah. Like the central idea behind it is that we probably should becoming more aware and sensitive to these sorts of things.
Absolutely.
It's just a nice platform to point and laugh at people being dickheads on the internet.
God bless the internet. I mean, what would I do with my life if there wasn't all these people posting online who could make me feel like I'm not the absolute shittiest person alive?
I'd probably be dead or a much more productive member of society. One or the other.
Chris
Yeah,
Chan
roll of the
saved
dice.
all our lives.
Chris Chan is woke now.
Ugh. God, I hate this reality. I mean, maybe it's true. Maybe Chris Chan's the best ally, but I'm just like, does Chris have to be woke?
See,
Can't Chris go back to being a racist, sexist, homophobe?
I always looked at it. The way I like to look at it. I don't know why I missed that word there. Let me try this again. The way I like to put it into perspective from my angle is that we exist in an alternate timeline. Like, there was a main timeline that we branched off from, and that's where all this Tom Girl stuff started, you know? Like, somewhere in the multiverse there's a core timeline that, you know, most people are still on, where Chris is still good old Chris.
And Donald Trump isn't president.
Yeah.
And they never made Marvel movies, and you can buy Sonichu at Barnes and Nobles.
Honestly, I don't think so much we're in the dark timeline. I think we're on a TV show that is like 40 seasons in and out of ideas. We're in like late The Simpsons.
6,000.
We're at the point where the shark is jumping the shark.
Oh man, the shark went into space and jumped the Earth, dude.
I like that. I like that. We're
just a shark in space.
The Simpsons allegory.
I mean, think about it. Like, fuck, we're out of ideas. What do we do now? I don't know. We could make Donald Trump the president. That might get some eyeballs. You know,
that ought to be interesting for a month.
We could start killing off everyone's favorite characters.
We're just we're at that point where the guys in the boardroom like unloose their ties and they have their feet kicked up on the table and they're just spitballing ideas. Like, we really got nothing.
So does this mean that they're going to do like an Infinite Crisis thing and reboot reality, and we'll start back?
Yeah, we're going to get to the Crisis on Infinite Earths arc, and they're going to start killing everyone.
Oh.
Man, I don't want to have to live my life again.
So speaking of, killing everybody off, you know what else is doing that? Capitalism. And it's been doing it in the great nation of China. Where your DVD player comes from. I assume that some people still have those. Something you're more likely to have a phone. It's probably made there.
A plate, even a lamp. Really, everything comes from China.
And a lot of it comes from our friends at Foxconn, home of the great poet Xu Lizhi, I believe.
The same Foxconn that's responsible for manufacturing electronics for a lot of very, very prolific North American companies and companies in other regions, I assume.
Their factories have like over 100,000 people in them. Their people live in dormitories and little with like 7 people to a room. A lot of them are rural folk who are finding that this pays better than their
farming dirt.
Whatever.
The same Foxconn with horrible working conditions that constantly drives employees to suicide.
Yeah.
I don't know what poor people in China, what country folk Chinese hicks do, but I assume it's not like American hicks, which means they get drunk and they're bored and they ride around and don't have much money. So seems like a great deal for them.
Is what's going on with them? What's responsible for the fact that they're only manufacturing like 4 goddamn Nintendo Switches?
Yeah, this all started really, the things got bad when Apple took the headphone jack out of the iPhone and people just saw that and they're just like, why, Tim? Why? I'm just going to jump. I'm going to fucking kill myself right here in the work dorms.
You know what the deal with that is? There's some guy with a fucking bow tie, and he said, well, If we took out the headphone jack, we would save 0.3% of a cent with every manufactured iPhone, and that would add up to $100,000 in savings over 10 years. Plus, we know that 90% of customers over a 3-year span will lose or break their earbuds, and we will see higher return on investment on our wireless earbuds if they have to buy new earbuds specifically and exclusively from the Apple family.
And we can sell them the illusion of choice by offering a dongle that'll let them plug in conventional earphones for a nominal fee.
For the cost of a set of wireless
God damn it!
Well, they were considering that, but what really pushed over the edge was when Johnny Ive just smashed into the boardroom all swollen, sweating, and just started screaming about how much just you can make it just a little smaller. We can finally make it. Steve wanted it. Johnny Ive hates negative space.
It'll be fine as long as we just use the words courageous and bold enough.
If you're courageous and bold enough to call everything courageous and bold, well, then people just think you're courageous and bold. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Don't even bother like acknowledging any fault with anything. They're courageous and bold. They can do it.
Welcome to Homo Vulgaris, the most courageous and bold podcast on the internet.
We hope you're listening to it on your Apple AirPods or your Beats headphones. Anyhow, another sad thing that comes from Foxconn that's probably sadder is the poetry about Mr. Xu Lizhi.
Now, this is the first I've heard of this. Care to explain?
Well, to read from this article on libcom.blog.fox.apple, translations of poems by Xu Lizhi, the Foxconn worker who committed suicide on the 30th of September in 2014 at the age of 24 in Shenzhen, China. Also includes an obituary with some explanatory notes, which we won't be going into. Basically, he was a guy who worked at Foxconn, and he wrote a lot of poetry, and then he killed himself. And a lot of the poetry is about working at Foxconn. This is the final poem he wrote. It's called On My Deathbed. These are translated from the heathen Chinese, so this probably won't be quite a representation of... I want to take another look at the ocean, behold the vastness of tears from half a lifetime. I want to climb another mountain, try to call back the soul that I've lost. I want to touch the sky, feel that blueness so light, but I can't do any of this, so I'm leaving this world. Everyone who's heard of me shouldn't be surprised at my leaving. Even less should you sigh or grieve. I was fine when I came, and fine when I left.
Wow.
Bomber!
Well, at least we got our iPhones.
I think this is the one that probably seems most related to his work. It's called A Screw Fell to the Ground. He wrote this the year he died in January 9th. A screw fell to the ground in the stark night of overtime, plunging vertically, lightly clinking. It won't attract anyone's attention, just like last time, on a night like this, when someone plunged to the ground.
I think in this case, now, I mean, I'm not an expert at critical analysis. I'm going way out on a limb here. I'm going to guess that in this case, the screw is a metaphor for another Foxconn worker that jumped off the roof of the building.
I think the screw really did fall, and it just evoked the memories like, another thing fell, and nobody noticed that either.
From one angle, this seems pretty dour and upsetting, but from the other, I see marketing potential. I think Apple and all the other cell phone manufacturers should start advertising that if you hold the speaker up to your ear, you can hear the screams of several impoverished Chinese workers on your phone.
Like a
that'd be
seashell.
really hardening.
Yeah, it's like that, except instead of the ocean, you just hear the death-curdling shouts and
the gentle, dulcet tones of endless human misery.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the reason I wanted to discuss some of these poems on the end, we're going to include a link to the article where we found this in the episode description, is, I mean, I never worked a job like this. I don't want to make a quantitative comparison. These dudes had to live in crowded dorms and work like 12-hour days. Like they had no room in their lives for life. But in these poems, I recognize like the same frustrations I had in my worst experiences working in like call centers and stuff, where it wasn't, you know, at least I got to go home after 8 hours and have a weekend and shit to do. Like it wasn't that bad, but it reminds me of the kind of just hopeless pointlessness of every job I've ever had, where you're doing nothing really of value or actively participating in something that makes the world worse.
Yeah,
And
there's that
just
really
dedicating not just so much of your time, but your mental resources, all of the stress of being screamed at all day, or having to worry about all of these little metrics and numbers they're throwing at you and things like that. It adds up. The time you spend not working, you have to spend so much of it decompressing from working before you can actually do any living, or that like 2 hours a day I'd have to spend stuck on the bus that no one was compensating me for. And I think everybody experiences that now with most of their jobs, whether you're working in a factory or fast food or a call center, you're not getting reasonably compensated for the work you do, and you're not doing work that you care about or value. It's all just pointless bullshit that keeps this dumb human misery machine running.
Like, even if it's not something you care about, it's not something you can even like feel like, well, I did a good job. There's no sense of pride. There's no sense of accomplishment of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, the reason like this is so tragic and so aggravating, and why it just always bothers me, because it's pointless. Like, none of this is essential to the function of human civilization.
Mm-hmm.
We have the means that if our society was organized better, no one would have to live this way anywhere. We could all work a little bit and then spend most of our time doing other stuff, which itself would mostly be work and productive things, but work and productive things that we want to do. Things in our community, things in our homes, raising children, art.
Mm-hmm. What really speaks to me about it isn't just the notion that it's pointless, it's completely needless, and that there's no satisfaction in it. What really speaks to me about it is that there's that really sort of kind of that dull, hollow futility in it, where not only are you doing this day in, day out, unlike, say, in a lot of places in the first world where you work a dead-end job to plug away towards getting somewhere more appropriate, somewhere that lets you climb the ladder. In third world countries and things like that, a lot of these people, they don't have any hope for upward improvement like that. It's just the same day in, day out, treacherous working conditions until the day they die, really. So I can see where a lot of that a lot of that hollowness really springs from, and it's something that I'm very glad that I can't personally fathom.
Yeah, like I want to make the point, I've never been where this guy has been, and I'm really glad I'm lucky enough that I haven't had to be there, because this is millions of people in China who are living like this. Like, how many poets and great minds and like just wonderful, lovely people are stuck like this guy, just having their whole lives ground away.
Yeah, how many great cultural definers, how many important engineers, creators, and things like that didn't get a chance to happen because the people they were stuck inside were, plugging away at in Foxconn factories for their entire life.
Yeah, because you've got no time or opportunity to do anything else with your life other than just get through to the next day.
He has a poem kind of about that, too, called The Last Graveyard. Even the machine is nodding off. Sealed workshops store diseased iron. Wages concealed behind curtains. Like that love that young workers bury at the bottom of their hearts. With no time for expression, motion crumbles into dust. They have stomachs forged of iron, full of acid, sulfuric. Industry captures their tears before they have the chance to fall. Time flows by, their heads lost in fog. Output weighs down their age. Pain works overtime day and night. Dizziness before their time is latent. The jig forces the skin to peel. And while it's at it, places on a layer of aluminum alloy. Some others are taken by illness. I am dozing between them, guarding the last graveyard.
What I think is probably the most personally upsetting to me about this whole setup is that I can't come up with any sort of argument that isn't a nihilistic. Wow, if I was in this sort of situation where the chances of things improving was literally zero, and I was doing the same thing every day until I died and just putting it off, I really couldn't blame a lot of people for just killing themselves, if I'm being honest.
Honestly, yeah, it's
You're hitting the same end point just earlier.
The closest thing I can come to a silver lining argument is, well, if this guy didn't have to work a really shitty factory job, he wouldn't have had the inspiration to make these poems.
Could have written a poem about how he fell in love and had kids.
Yeah. But I mean, that probably wouldn't appeal to my...
About a walk in the park he took where the cherry blossoms made him think about the fragility of existence or something.
Yeah, but we don't like poems like that on Homo Vulgaris. We would have had... If this...
No, we wouldn't be reading his shit, so fuck him. We're
Without this tragedy, we'd have no content for today's episode.
Sorry, buddy.
So what you're saying is, much like the people who run Foxconn, we are exploiting the downtrodden oppression of third world workers in factories for our reckless ends.
There is no ethical consumption under capitalism.
We're commoditizing his death art and hoping that he'll donate to our Patreon.
You, listener, are listening to this on an Apple product that is stained with this man's blood, or someone just like him.
If you would like to seek absolution for the horrendous sin of buying a product made by underpaid, overworked Foxconn workers, please feel free to pay a... Oh, what's the term? Pay an... what do they call it?
Indulgence?
Yes, that's the one. Thank you. Please consider paying an indulgence to the Homo Vulgaris Patreon.
So we'll collect the money by a PayPal with a little cut to Elon Musk so he can blow up spaceships.
I am an ordained minister in the Universal Life Church, and I will personally absolve the sins of every single Patreon donor we get. After
I won't absolve your sins, but I'll excuse them.
Yeah, see, it's a 1-2 punch.
You can get it absolved and excused for the price of one. How can you say no to that?
I will be a false reference on your resume.
I will be 2 false references on your resume.
Who saw that anime anime McDonald's commercial?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We'll have to include a link to this. It's, mein Gott, it is pure ideology.
It really is.
It may be the greatest cultural achievement of our modern world.
It was beautiful.
It's a couple of minutes long. There's just like an anime girl. She sees a help wanted sign on a Japanese McDonald's, and she goes to work there. And it's just like a little adventure where she's like learning how to do her job, and everything's fun. And then by the end, she's the manager who greets the next little girl who wants to join the McDonald's family. It felt like it was trying to indoctrinate me into a cult, or at least a cell phone contract.
What really strikes me as odd about this, I don't know if they relegated this to like the director's cut or what, but like I feel like it's missing the scenes where she goes home to struggle with her horrible depression, and also sees back alley deals being cut behind the restaurant with illicit drugs and other such substances. It really doesn't feel like a one-to-one representation of the McDonald's that I know and love.
I mean, you worked in fast food quite a bit. I'm sure you can tell us about the grim, horrifying, suicide poetry-inducing reality of working at a fast food place.
Yeah, it's something. It's something that I would need some time to collect my thoughts on. But yeah, I suppose there are parallels to be drawn.
Do we need hypnotherapy to unlock your repressed memories?
I mean, I definitely wouldn't say no.
I worked at a pizza place in high school, and God, I never want to. I mean, I've worked at a debt collector and all these other shitty jobs, but one thing I would never ever do is get between people and their food.
Yeah, they're specifically they're greasy, all-American manufactured burgers.
All American, complete with beef imported from Thailand.
Yeah, but
it's kind of more pink slime. Really.
You don't need to worry about that because only 20% of it is beef. The last 80% is sawdust, and that was made in the good old U.S. of A.
Yeah, well, actually, the sawdust probably came from Canada, actually, because we don't have that much of a lumber industry here.
Yeah, you guys chopped down all your trees. We still got plenty of ours.
Yeah, that's why we chopped ours down. We figured we'd just use yours.
And you need to keep buying them. That's the only thing keeping my whole family in the
we kept a lot of the
financially here.
We kept a lot of the redwoods.
So to our American audience, Canada's biggest net trade partner and importer of our goods. If you're planning on recycling, fuck right off with that shit. You waste as much paper and pulp and wood products as you possibly can.
I used to worry about recycling and like not throwing my McDonald's cups on the ground, but then lately I've just kind of been like, you know what, fuck the earth. I don't care anymore. I hope it dies.
I don't hope the earth dies. I just hope a lot of the things on the earth die.
I mean, even the animals suck, honestly.
Means to an end.
Yeah, I mean, fuck animals. Like,
fuck birds.
What have animals ever done for me?
Their obscene colors and their dirty music influencing the youth.
A bird pooped on me once, so.
They shit on everything. Fuck birds. Fuck dogs. They're stupid.
But not literally.
They're ass kissers, literally.
That's true, yeah.
They're ass sniffers. That's even worse.
Fuck bats. They're just big, hairy, meaty bugs. Fuck dolphins. Fuck crabs.
Dolphins are rapists.
Oh yeah.
I just kind of threw that out there. But I swear that's a thing I read about one.
I think it's not just dolphins, but I think also ducks and geese. I think
oh my god, dude!
Don't all three of them participate in gang rape? I think they do.
They do. Oh, duck reproduction. I mean, all joking aside, duck reproduction is really horrifying, and I think like people who deify nature, let's consider duck reproduction.
Well, yeah, like.
You know, it's
you could have explained the horror of duck reproduction to me just by telling me that their penises were drill shaped.
Oh, they're not just drill shaped. They're like expanding flesh things. There's been like an evolutionary war between female ducks and male ducks, and female ducks have maze-like vaginas complete with dead ends. And male ducks have penises that expand outward in kind of a crazy corkscrew fashion. Well, I hopefully will remember to link to video of it. There's like a video I saw of like I don't know how they did it, but they got a duck to get a boner into like a crazy straw test tube, and it just expands through the whole.
Why are duck genetics so diametrically opposed to the idea of reproduction?
They're just
it kind of defies conventional logic.
That's so weird. Like, I don't understand why a species would want that bad to not be able to reproduce.
Because they know how shitty they are. Like, nature has tried to stop them because they're horrible, and they just won't fucking stop.
I can see that being the case for geese. Like, geese are the fucking worst. But
they're made of hatred and evil.
I know. I've been attacked by them multiple times. It's horrible.
I had geese run at me while I was on a moving scooter once, like running at a moving vehicle to attack me. Jesus.
Penises. Ducks have them. Most other birds don't. In fact, only 3% of birds have penises.
Geese are the physical manifestations of hatred that walk this blue earth.
Them and chickens. I remember as a small child, we briefly lived on a hobby farm on Vancouver Island outside Parksville that my great aunt owned. And I was a really little kid, but I remember us building a chicken coop for her and putting chickens in there and going in to get eggs in the morning. I mean, farm fresh eggs, like, that's pretty good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But those chickens, they kind of freaked me out a little bit as a kid. Not just because they get all ornery when you went to take their eggs, but because when you look into the eyes of a chicken, into like its beady, kind of vacant, yellow, black eyes, you can tell it's descended from dinosaurs. Like it's just like the eyes of a velociraptor and noted paleontological documentary Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it's something that I haven't properly been able to find the words for, but birds specifically, more than any animal, they strike this really weird ground of just weirdness, you know? I have trouble thinking of any animal whose behavior I could categorize as just plain weird. And I think chickens are probably like the peak of that in birds.
I don't know, dude. I've seen some pretty weird cats. Like anybody who's a cat person or grew up in a cat family will have some weird cat stories.
A lot of it's to do with the fact that a lot of the times, like pet birds and things like that can exhibit behavior that you can really kind of empathize with in sort of the same way you can with dogs and things like that. But unlike dogs, despite having a lot of this really, really charismatic, like human-ish behavior, they have a lot of really weird things beside that, like how all those weird head movements they do, and just I don't know. I don't get birds.
With the bobbing and
you see it a lot in a lot of like domesticated pet birds and stuff like that, and I don't think I can't think of any other animal that's simultaneously so relatable but also so unrelatable, you know?
They're almost like kabuki theater.
I think you're gonna need to explain that one.
I don't have an explanation. I just said it to sound smart, and it backfired.
I mean, yeah, you're right. Kabuki theater with the kabuki and the theater and the guys with the makeup.
And the dolls.
Actually, I don't know. Do if we want to digress into just Pinback's fabulous fun fact zone, did you know that the stereotypical ninja outfit isn't actually anything historically to do with what ninjas wore?
Yeah, I've heard of this.
They're actually dressed like Naruto.
Yeah, with the spiky blonde hair. Historically, ninjas were they're kind of more like, if anyone ever played the Hitman games, like they were guys that would like take a flintlock pistol and just dress as like a worker or a peasant.
Yeah, the best disguise is a disguise.
Or poison you. The ninja outfit comes from, and I mean, I'm not an academic, so this may just be something. This is just something I read online. The tradition of the ninja outfit comes from kabuki theater, because guys would dress in those black outfits to do the puppetry, and you could see them, but the audience was basically like,
they were trained.
You're trained to ignore them to focus on what's happening in the foreground. So in order to surprise audiences, sometimes if a character was going to get assassinated, they've had one of these guys in the black outfits jump into the foreground like, haha, I'm a ninja, and kill someone. And he'd be like, holy shit, breaking the fourth wall
break. Yep.
And then that just, you add 80s action movies to the mix, and that became the typical ninja outfit.
Now kabuki theater, isn't that what they call it when you're watching a video and a guy rubs one off on a girl's face?
No, that's when a bunch of guys do it.
Yeah, a bunch of guys dressed like ninjas will descend from the ceiling on wires and jerk off on you, and that's
you think he's a stagehand, but then he comes.
That's the stage jerking off hand.
One hand jerks the other.
My right stage hand is a lot stronger than my left.
I hope if anyone is listening to this who's Japanese, I'm sorry, and I'm also not sorry.
No, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, how you're always being racist even when you don't know it.
Oh, I know it.
But it's the Japanese. I mean,
Yeah, they had an empire. They've got robots. They're doing their own thing. Japan's doing okay.
They were basically ocean Nazis back in the time. Nazis with better boats.
I mean, the Nazis sucked at boats, dude. Don't even get me started on the Kriegsmarine. Submarines aside, it was kind of a fucking joke.
If we're calling the Japanese Nazis with boats, does that make Korea Poland?
Yeah, actually. Oh, first. Poland was occupied for like 5 years. Korea was occupied for like half a century. And like, don't even get the Koreans started on the Japanese, man. Like, that is an ugly legacy of colonialism and abuse. Says the guy living in North America, where we just conveniently genocided 90% of the indigenous population, so we didn't have to worry about them anymore.
Just shared blankets with them that they really didn't like.
They were getting real preachy about how we should and shouldn't handle the whole buffalo thing. Anyhow, it's time to wind down. Any final thoughts from anybody?
Honestly, like, if I can just be painfully sincere for a moment, we don't have to live in a world where millions of people have to work in factories for 12 hours a day to make iPhones for people that work in call centers for 8 hours a day. We really don't. And all ultimately it'll take to change that is for enough people to believe that it's possible. I guess that's my final message for today. Please say something like just dumb and funny to counteract that, because I feel like this has been kind of a weirdly heavy episode.
I think I'm going to cap my night off with some kabuki theater, boys.
Well,
it's good for your skin.
I don't like to take the workplace home with me like that. I'm just gonna say, wrap it up. Don't get diseases, don't spread diseases, unless they're diseases of the mind. In which case, we
are the mind disease. Spread us like typhoid.
My final thought is that I got as rich as I am by being smarter than the smarties and tougher than the toughies. I made $1 trillion and I made it fair and square. Scrooge McDuck.